The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Oak Ridge community pool as Renee Taylor made her final rounds. After 3 years as property manager for the Oak Ridge Homeowners Association, this end-of-day routine was second nature to her. She moved with quiet efficiency, checking chlorine levels one last time, making sure the life preservers were properly stored, and that no personal items had been left behind by residents. Renee took pride in her work. The community pool wasn't just a job. It was a place where she'd built relationships with many of the families who lived in Oak Ridge. She knew which kids were scared of the deep end, which older residents came for morning water aerobics, and which teenagers liked to show off their diving skills. She'd watched children grow from clinging to pool noodles to swimming confident laps. As she checked items off her mental list, Renee hummed softly to herself. It had been a busy Saturday at the pool, the kind of perfect early summer day that brought out nearly everyone in the neighborhood. Now, with the pool officially closed at 7 p.m., she was alone with her thoughts and the gentle lapping of water against the sides of the pool. Across the fenced pool area, Lisa Winters sat on her patio sipping a glass of white wine. She'd moved into Oak Ridge just 4 months ago, drawn by the neighborhood's reputation for safety and well-maintained amenities. The community pool had been a major selling point. From her vantage point, she could see someone moving around the pool area, handling equipment and checking doors. Lisa frowned. She prided herself on being vigilant about neighborhood safety. As a member of the Oak Ridge Community Watch Group's Facebook page, she regularly posted about suspicious vehicles or people she didn't recognize. Most of her posts received likes and supportive comments from other residents who appreciated her attention to detail. "Who's that?" she wondered aloud, setting down her wine glass. The pool should be closed by now. Why was someone still there? And more importantly, who was this person she didn't recognize touching pool equipment? Lisa had attended exactly one HOA meeting since moving in, where she'd been more focused on complaining about a neighbor's unapproved garden statue than paying attention to introductions of community staff. She knew there was a property manager, but in her mind that position would be filled by someone who looked different from the black woman she now watched through the fence. Renee, meanwhile, knelt beside the pump house, checking that everything was in order before locking up. She wore a navy blue polo shirt with the Oak Ridge HOA logo embroidered on the chest, the same shirt she wore every day at work. But from Lisa's distance, this detail wasn't visible. Reaching for her phone, Lisa hesitated for just a moment. Should she walk over and ask who the woman was? The thought flickered briefly but was quickly dismissed. Better safe than sorry, she reasoned. If this person belonged there, the police would simply confirm that and leave. No harm done. With this justification firmly in mind, Lisa dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher answered. Yes, hello, Lisa replied, her voice hushed despite being well out of earshot of the pool. I'm calling from Oak Ridge Community. There's someone tampering with our pool equipment right now. The pool is supposed to be closed, and I don't recognize this person at all. Can you describe the individual? The dispatcher asked. A black woman, maybe in her 40s. She's messing with the pump house and checking doors. She definitely doesn't look like she belongs here. Is she damaging anything or just moving around the area? Lisa paused. Well, she's touching equipment and going into restricted areas. I mean, residents aren't allowed in the pump house. Understood. We'll send officers to check it out. Would you like to remain anonymous? No, that's fine. I'm at 47 Oak Ridge Lane. I can meet the officers when they arrive. As Lisa ended the call, she felt a rush of satisfaction. This was what good neighbors did. They looked out for community property. She watched as Renee moved toward the small office at the side of the pool area, keys jangling in her hand. Renee was mentally preparing her weekly report as she unlocked the office door. The water chemistry had been slightly off this morning, requiring an adjustment, and one of the shower handles in the women's changing room was dripping again. These details mattered to her. They were part of maintaining the pool as a clean, safe place for everyone. Inside the small office, she sat down at the desk and opened the logbook. Her handwriting filled page after page, a detailed record of maintenance tasks, chemical levels, and occasional incidents like the time last summer when a child had scraped their knee on the rough pool edge, prompting Renee to have the area repaired immediately. She made her final notes for the day, then closed the book with a satisfied nod. Through the office window, Renee could see the still water of the pool glowing turquoise in the early evening light. These quiet moments at day's end were peaceful, a chance to appreciate the space before heading home to her own family. Her teenage son had a basketball game tomorrow that she was looking forward to attending. Working weekends meant she sometimes missed his activities, but she tried to arrange her schedule around the important ones. Her husband would have dinner waiting when she got home, probably the chicken stir-fry he'd been perfecting lately. Across the neighborhood, Lisa paced on her patio, occasionally glancing toward the pool. The woman was still there now in the office. What was taking the police so long? In her mind, each minute that passed represented more opportunity for something to be damaged or stolen. Lisa had grown up in a predominantly white suburb where she'd been taught, in subtle and not-so-subtle ways, to be wary of people who looked different from her. These lessons had never been directly stated as being about race. They were framed as street smarts and being careful, but the examples and warnings had painted a clear picture of who was considered suspicious. As an adult, Lisa would have denied being prejudiced. She had black colleagues at work whom she got along with just fine. She'd even voted for Obama once. But deep down, unexamined biases colored her perceptions, especially in moments like this when she felt a need to protect her community. 10 minutes after her call, Lisa spotted a police cruiser turning onto Oak Ridge Lane. She straightened her shirt and walked down her front path to flag them down. At the pool, Renee was finishing her final tasks. She gathered her bag, did one last visual sweep of the pool area, and prepared to set the alarm system. Tomorrow was her day off, and the weekend lifeguard would handle opening procedures. Everything was in order for the handoff. The sound of tires on gravel caught her attention. Looking up, she saw a police car pulling into the pool parking lot. Her first thought was concern. Had something happened in the neighborhood? As property manager, she was often a point of contact for community issues. Renee stepped out of the office, keys in hand, ready to assist the officers with whatever brought them to Oak Ridge. In 3 years on the job, she'd developed a good working relationship with local law enforcement, collaborating on everything from water safety days to helping coordinate neighborhood watch meetings. What she couldn't see from her position was Lisa hurrying toward the police car, pointing eagerly toward the pool area. Nor could she hear Lisa's words to the officers. That's her. She's been here for at least half an hour and I've never seen her before. As the two officers exited their vehicle, Renee smiled and raised her hand in a friendly wave, completely unaware that she was the reason for their presence. In her mind, she was simply greeting public servants who might need her assistance. The setting sun reflected off the pool's surface, creating dancing patterns of light across the concrete deck. The day was ending much like any other for Renee, or so she thought. She had no idea that in the next few minutes, her sense of belonging in the community she served would be challenged in a way that would ripple through Oak Ridge for months to come. Behind her, the pool lay silent and still, reflecting the deepening blue of the evening sky, a peaceful backdrop to the confrontation that was about to unfold. The two police officers approached the pool area with measured steps. Officer Danielle Chen had been with the Oak Ridge Police Department for 8 years, while her partner, Officer Michael Torres, was a 15-year veteran. Both wore expressions of professional neutrality as they sized up the situation. Behind them, Lisa Winters followed at a slight distance, close enough to observe but far enough to give the impression she wasn't interfering with police business. Her arms were crossed over her chest, her posture radiating righteous concern. "Ma'am," Officer Chen called out as they neared the gate. "Can we have a word with you?" Renee Taylor turned, her hand still on the lock she'd been about to secure. "Of course, officers. Is everything okay?" As Renee stepped toward the gate, recognition dawned on Officer Torres's face. The subtle tension in his shoulders eased. "Ms. Taylor? Renee Taylor?" he asked, his voice shifting from formal to familiar. Renee smiled, though confusion lingered in her eyes. "Yes, that's me. Good to see you again, Officer Torres." Officer Chen glanced at her partner, eyebrows raised in silent question. "Renee is the property manager here," Torres explained. "We worked together on that water safety program for the elementary school kids last spring, remember? And her son plays basketball with my nephew at Oak Ridge High." Understanding replaced the professional caution on Officer Chen's face. "Oh, of course. I think we met at the community center fundraiser too. Behind them, Lisa's expression morphed from vigilant satisfaction to uncertainty. She took a small step forward, still clutching her phone. "Excuse me," she interjected, "but are you sure? I've never seen her here before, and I live right there." She pointed to her house overlooking the pool. Renee's gaze shifted to Lisa, recognition flickering in her eyes. She'd seen this woman at the pool several times over the past few months but had never been introduced. Now, understanding the situation, a complex mix of emotions crossed her face. Surprise, disappointment, and a weary recognition that this was not, unfortunately, a new experience, ma'am. Officer Chen addressed Lisa. "Ms. Taylor is indeed the property manager for Oak Ridge. She's authorized to be here." Lisa's cheeks flushed pink. "I was just being careful," she said defensively. "I didn't know who she was, and it looked suspicious to see someone at the pool after hours." "I close the pool every Saturday," Renee explained, her voice calm despite the knot forming in her stomach. She gestured to the logo on her shirt. "I've been the property manager here for 3 years." Lisa glanced at the embroidered logo she hadn't noticed from her patio, then quickly looked away. "Well, how was I supposed to know that? I just moved in a few months ago." Officer Torres pulled out his notepad, more as a prop to diffuse the awkward tension than from any need to document. "We appreciate community vigilance, but in this case, there's no issue here. Ms. Taylor is exactly where she's supposed to be, doing her job." The implications of what had just happened hung in the air between them all. No one voiced the obvious question. Would Lisa have called 911 if Renee had been white? "Actually," Renee said, breaking the uncomfortable silence, "we met briefly at the April HOA meeting. I introduced myself to the new residents." Her tone wasn't accusatory, just matter-of-fact. Lisa's flush deepened. She had a vague recollection of that introduction now, but she'd been preoccupied with her complaint about the neighbor's garden statue and hadn't paid attention. Officer Chen turned to Lisa. "Ma'am, we appreciate you looking out for the community, but we do need to be thoughtful about when to call emergency services." "I was just trying to protect the neighborhood," Lisa insisted, her embarrassment making her defensive. Anyone would have done the same. But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they weren't true. Not everyone would have immediately called 911 without first asking a simple question. Not everyone would have assumed the worst about a black woman in a staff uniform going about her business. Renee took a deep breath, maintaining her professional demeanor. Years of similar experiences had taught her how to navigate these waters, though the necessity of doing so was exhausting. "The pool opens at 10 tomorrow," she said to Lisa, deliberately changing the subject. "The forecast says it'll be another beautiful day. Your kids seemed to enjoy the diving board last weekend." This small personal detail, that Renee had noticed and remembered Lisa's children, landed like a gentle rebuke. While Lisa had never bothered to learn who Renee was, Renee had been paying attention to Lisa's family all along. "Oh," Lisa said, caught off guard by the kindness. "Yes, they did." Officer Torres cleared his throat. "Well, since everything's in order here, we'll be on our way. You have a good evening, Renee. Tell Jason good luck at his game tomorrow." "I will," Renee replied with a genuine smile. "He'll be happy to know you asked about him." Officer Chen gave a polite nod to both women. "Miss Winters, if you have any community concerns in the future, the non-emergency line might be more appropriate unless there's an immediate threat." Lisa nodded stiffly, already backing away. "Right. Sorry for the misunderstanding." As the officers walked back to their cruiser, Lisa turned and hurried toward her house, her spine rigid with embarrassment. Renee stood alone by the pool gate, keys still in hand. The interaction replayed in her mind as she finished locking up, her movements now automatic while her thoughts raced. This wasn't the first time something like this had happened to her. There was the time a resident had demanded to see her ID when she entered the community garden to fix the irrigation system, or when she'd been followed by security at the hardware store while buying supplies for the clubhouse. Each incident was explained away as a misunderstanding or just being cautious, but the pattern was clear. As she walked to her car in the now empty parking lot, Renee felt the familiar weight of these accumulated misunderstandings settle on her shoulders. She was good at her job. She was respected by many in the community. Most of the residents knew her and appreciated her work. But moments like this were sharp reminders that to some, her presence would always trigger suspicion first. No matter her uniform, no matter her role, no matter how long she'd been there. Climbing into her car, Renee placed her bag on the passenger seat and sat for a moment without starting the engine. She thought about calling her husband to vent but decided against it. She didn't want to bring this energy home, not when her son had his big game tomorrow. Besides, what would she say that she hadn't said before? What advice would her husband offer that he hadn't offered in the past? Instead, she took out her phone and opened her calendar, scrolling to next Thursday, the date of the monthly HOA meeting. With deliberate taps, she added a note, Community Introduction Initiative. It wasn't enough to simply move on and pretend this hadn't happened. Something needed to change in Oak Ridge, and as property manager, Renee was in a position to suggest that change. Not with anger or accusation, but with thoughtful purpose. Starting the car, Renee backed out of her parking space. In her rearview mirror, she could see the pool, now still and quiet in the gathering dusk. From Lisa's house, warm light spilled from the windows. She wondered what Lisa was thinking now, whether this incident would prompt any reflection. As Renee drove through the familiar streets of Oak Ridge toward home, her initial hurt and frustration began to transform into determination. This community, with all its complexities and flaws, was still a place she cared about. What had happened today was an opportunity, uncomfortable and unwelcome, but an opportunity nonetheless to make Oak Ridge better. By the time she pulled into her own driveway, the outline of an idea was forming in her mind. The HOA meeting would be her platform, and she would use it not to shame or accuse but to build, to create something constructive from this experience. Her husband, Anthony, opened the front door as she approached, the warm smells of dinner wafting out to greet her. "You're late," he said, but his smile took any criticism out of the words. "Everything okay at the pool?" Renee paused on the threshold, the events of the evening still fresh. For a moment, she considered brushing it off with a simple, "Fine." Instead, she stepped inside and said, "Actually, something happened that I want to talk about. But first, tell me about your day." The door closed behind her, shutting out the growing darkness. Inside was light, understanding, and the comfort of being truly known. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, she was home. The gymnasium echoed with squeaking sneakers and shouts as Renee settled into the bleachers. Sunday afternoon basketball games were her favorite way to unwind after a busy week, especially when her son Jason was playing. Today's game was particularly important. Oak Ridge High was facing their crosstown rivals. "Did I miss anything?" Anthony asked, returning to his seat with 2 paper cups of watery concession stand coffee. "Just warm-ups," Renee replied, accepting the cup gratefully. She hadn't slept well last night, her mind replaying yesterday's incident at the pool. Anthony studied his wife's face. After 15 years of marriage, he could read the subtle signs of her unrest, the slight furrow between her eyebrows, the way she absently twisted her wedding ring. "You're still thinking about it, aren't you?" he asked quietly. Before she could answer, a familiar voice called out, "Hey, Taylors!" They looked up to see Officer Torres climbing the bleachers toward them, out of uniform in jeans and an Oak Ridge High t-shirt. With him was a lanky teenage boy who bore a striking resemblance to the officer. "Mike, good to see you," Anthony said, extending his hand. "And Alex. Man, you've grown another inch since I saw you last month." Alex grinned. "Coach says I might start varsity next year if I keep it up. Mind if we join you?" Torres asked. "Best seats in the house right here. Please," Renee said, moving her purse to make room. As they settled in, Torres lowered his voice. "I wanted to check in after yesterday. That situation at the pool, it wasn't right." Renee sipped her coffee. "It's fine. It happens. That's the problem though, isn't it?" Torres replied. "It shouldn't happen, and it shouldn't be something you have to shrug off as normal." The conversation paused as the teams took the court for introductions. Jason, tall and confident in his blue and white uniform, waved when he spotted his parents. Renee and Anthony waved back enthusiastically. "He's looking good," Torres commented. "Coach says he's the best point guard they've had in years." Renee smiled with pride, momentarily distracted from their previous topic. "He's worked so hard. This game matters a lot to him." As the game began, they fell into the rhythm of spectating, cheering good plays, groaning at missed opportunities, and wincing at the referee's questionable calls. For a while, Renee was able to fully immerse herself in the game, her concerns temporarily set aside. During halftime, with Oak Ridge leading by 6 points, the conversation inevitably circled back. "I've been thinking," Torres said while the boys were getting drinks. That woman who called on you, Lisa Winters, she's new to the neighborhood, right? Moved in about 4 months ago, Renee confirmed. Nice house on Oak Ridge Lane overlooks the pool. Have you thought about what you're going to do? Renee raised an eyebrow. Do? What makes you think I'm going to do anything? Torres chuckled. Because I know you, Renee. You're not the type to just let something like this slide. You've got that look. The same one you had when the HOA board tried to cut the pool maintenance budget last year. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Well, maybe I've been thinking about it. The monthly HOA meeting is this Thursday. You're going to bring it up? Anthony asked, surprise evident in his voice. Renee had mentioned her thoughts the night before, but not any concrete plans. Not as an accusation, she clarified, but as an opportunity. I've been property manager for 3 years and I still have residents who don't know who I am. That's partly on me. Torres nodded thoughtfully. Community recognition. Making sure everyone knows who belongs, exactly. When people know each other, they're less likely to make assumptions. Renee paused, choosing her words carefully. I don't think Lisa called the police because she's a bad person. I think she called because she didn't know me, and when she saw someone she didn't recognize, someone who looked like me, she assumed the worst. That's still on her, Anthony pointed out. She could have just asked who you were. You're right, Renee agreed. But I'm interested in solutions, not blame. If we want Oak Ridge to be truly inclusive, we need to be intentional about it. The buzzer signaled the end of halftime, cutting their conversation short. As the teams returned to the court, Renee found herself watching the game with renewed energy. The seed of an idea that had formed last night was beginning to sprout, taking shape in her mind as something tangible and possible. The second half of the game was a nail-biter. Jason played brilliantly, scoring 12 points and making a crucial steal in the final minutes to secure Oak Ridge's victory. As the final buzzer sounded, the home crowd erupted in cheers. After congratulating their sons and making plans to celebrate with pizza, Renee and Anthony said goodbye to Torres and Alex in the parking lot. Let me know how the HOA meeting goes, Torres said. And if you need any support with whatever you're planning, I'm in. Thanks, Mike, I appreciate that. On the drive home, with Jason recounting every play from the back seat, Renee felt a sense of clarity that had eluded her since yesterday's incident. The hurt and frustration were still there, but they were no longer the dominant emotions. Instead, she felt purposeful, even optimistic. The next few days passed in a blur of normal activity. Work, family dinners, helping Jason with a science project. But in quiet moments, Renee refined her idea, jotting notes and researching similar initiatives in other communities. By Thursday evening, she was ready. The monthly HOA meeting was held in the Oak Ridge Community Center, a modest building adjacent to the pool. Renee arrived early to help set up chairs and prepare the refreshment table, part of her duties as property manager, but also a chance to center herself before the meeting began. Board President Thomas Wilson greeted her warmly. Evening, Renee. How's everything looking for the summer pool season? We're in good shape, she replied, arranging cookies on a plastic tray. The new chlorination system is working well and the lifeguards are all certified and scheduled. Excellent. Oh, and I saw the report about that shower handle in the women's changing room. Maintenance fixed it yesterday, I noticed. Thanks for pushing that through quickly. Thomas lowered his voice. I also heard about what happened on Saturday. Officer Chen's wife is in my book club. Are you okay? Renee appreciated his concern but kept her response light. I'm fine. Actually, I was hoping to speak about something related during the open forum portion of the meeting tonight. Before Thomas could inquire further, other board members and residents began arriving. The folding chairs filled quickly. HOA meetings were surprisingly well attended in Oak Ridge, partly because they were one of the few regular social events in the community, and partly because residents took genuine interest in neighborhood affairs. Renee scanned the room as she took her seat in the front row. Most faces were familiar. The retired couple who walked their golden retriever past the pool every morning, the young family who had recently added a patio to their backyard, the high school teacher who had championed the renovation of the community playground, and there, slipping in just as the meeting was called to order, was Lisa Winters. She took a seat in the back row, her posture rigid, eyes fixed firmly on the agenda handout. The meeting proceeded with its usual efficiency. Reports were given, budgets discussed, a proposal for new landscaping along the entrance road approved. Finally, Thomas opened the floor for community comments. Before we wrap up, does anyone have other business to discuss? Renee raised her hand and at Thomas's nod walked to the front of the room. Standing before her neighbors, people whose children swam in her pool, whose community spaces she maintained, whose property values were partially in her hands, she felt a brief flutter of nervousness. Then she remembered Jason's confidence on the basketball court and she found her voice. Good evening, everyone. For those who don't know me, I'm Renee Taylor, your property manager for the past 3 years. She smiled warmly, making eye contact with several residents. I'm responsible for the pool, the community center, and the other shared spaces that make Oak Ridge special. She paused, noting the puzzled expressions on some faces, residents who, despite her years of service, were seeing her for the first time. Recently, I had an experience that made me think about how we recognize and welcome people in our community. It wasn't a big incident, and I'm not here to complain or criticize, but it did highlight a gap I think we could address together. From the back of the room, Lisa's eyes were now fixed on Renee, her expression unreadable. I'd like to propose a community recognition initiative. Something simple but meaningful. A series of events and tools to help us all better know who belongs here, who serves here, and who our neighbors are. Renee outlined her ideas: photo directories, staff introductions, quarterly community gatherings with a purpose beyond business. When we know each other, she concluded, we build trust, we make fewer assumptions, we create a community where everyone feels they truly belong. She didn't look at Lisa as she said this, keeping her gaze moving around the room. I'd be happy to coordinate this initiative as part of my role with the board's approval. There was a moment of silence when she finished. Then Thomas spoke up. I think that's an excellent idea, Renee. Let's put it to a quick vote. All in favor of establishing this community recognition initiative? Hands rose throughout the room, and in the back row, after a moment's hesitation, Lisa Winters raised her hand too. The evening air was warm as residents filtered out of the community center after the HOA meeting. Small groups lingered in the parking lot, continuing discussions that had begun inside. Renee stood near the entrance, accepting congratulations and fielding questions about her community recognition initiative. I love the photo directory idea, said Mrs. Henderson, who had lived in Oak Ridge since the development was built. My memory isn't what it used to be, and it would help me put names to faces. And those quarterly meet and greets, added Doug Patterson, a father of 3 whose family used the pool almost daily in summer. My kids would enjoy that. Maybe we could make it a potluck. That's a great suggestion, Renee replied, mentally adding it to her growing list of ideas. The response to her proposal had been overwhelmingly positive, with many residents offering to help organize the first event. As the crowd thinned, Renee began gathering her notes and preparing to lock up the community center. Thomas, the board president, helped stack the folding chairs against the wall. You know, he said casually, when I first heard about what happened at the pool, I was worried you might be upset with the HOA, but you turned it into something constructive. That's pretty remarkable, Renee. She shrugged, though his words meant more to her than she let on. It seemed like the right approach. Oak Ridge is a good community. We just need to be more intentional about some things. Thomas nodded thoughtfully. Well, the board is fully behind you on this. Whatever resources you need, just let us know. As they finished cleaning up, Renee noticed someone still sitting in the back row of chairs. Lisa Winters hadn't moved even as the room emptied around her. She seemed lost in thought, staring at the printed agenda in her hands. I'll finish up here, Thomas offered, following Renee's gaze. Take your time. With a grateful nod, Renee made her way to the back of the room. She didn't speak immediately, just sat down in the chair beside Lisa, leaving one empty seat between them. The silence stretched for several moments before Lisa finally looked up. I don't know what to say, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. You don't have to say anything, Renee replied. But I do. Lisa twisted the paper in her hands. What I did was wrong. I made assumptions about you because... She faltered. Because I'm black. Renee finished simply. Lisa flinched slightly, but nodded. Yes, and I need to own that. I've been sitting here trying to find a way to apologize without making excuses, but everything I think of sounds hollow. An apology is a good start, Renee said. But what matters more is what comes next. What does come next? Lisa asked. How do I make this right? Renee considered the question carefully. She had been on the receiving end of apologies before, some sincere, others obligatory. What had always mattered to her wasn't the words themselves, but whether they led to meaningful change. You could help with the initiative, she suggested. We'll need volunteers for the first community event. Lisa looked surprised by the offer. You'd want my help? After what I did? This isn't about punishing you, Lisa. It's about building a better community, one where everyone feels they belong. Including you. Renee paused. Besides, I noticed your youngest has a real talent for diving. The pool committee could use someone with knowledge of competitive swimming. The mention of her child softened something in Lisa's expression. Zoe loves the water. She's been begging for lessons. We have a good program here, Renee said. I could get you the information. For the first time since their unfortunate first meeting, Lisa smiled. A small, uncertain gesture, but genuine. I'd appreciate that. And yes, I'd like to help with the initiative. It's the least I can do. As they walked out to the parking lot together, an awkward but not unfriendly silence between them, Renee felt the weight of the past few days begin to lift. There was still work to be done. A lifetime of biases wasn't undone in a single conversation, but it was a beginning. The next morning, Renee arrived at the pool early. The weekend incident felt distant now as she went through her opening routine, checking chemical levels and skimming a few fallen leaves from the water's surface. Her phone buzzed with a text from Anthony. Proud of you. Dinner out tonight to celebrate? She smiled and sent back a thumbs-up emoji, then turned her attention to the day ahead. The first swim classes of the season would begin that afternoon, and she wanted everything to be perfect. Around noon, Officer Chen stopped by during her patrol route. She leaned against her cruiser as Renee came out to greet her. Torres told me about your community recognition initiative, Chen said. The department wants to help. Captain suggested we could do a meet your officers booth at your first event. That would be perfect, Renee replied. The more connections we build, the better. Chen hesitated, then added, You know what you're doing, turning something negative into a community-building opportunity. That takes character. Not everyone would respond that way. Renee appreciated the compliment, but deflected with a small joke. Well, property management is basically 50% cleaning and 50% community diplomacy. Just doing my job. But as Officer Chen drove away, Renee allowed herself a moment to acknowledge that this went beyond her job description. This was about creating lasting change in a place that mattered to her. Over the next 2 weeks, the Community Recognition Initiative took shape. Renee coordinated with the HOA board, set dates for the first quarterly event, and began work on the photo directory. Residents responded enthusiastically, sending in family photos and brief introductions for inclusion. Perhaps most surprisingly, Lisa Winters became one of the most dedicated volunteers. She offered to host a planning meeting at her house, organized a sign-up for the potluck, and spoke openly with neighbors about her own wake-up call regarding assumptions and community belonging. I made a mistake that could have had serious consequences, she told the planning committee gathered in her living room, but Renee showed me that recognizing a mistake is just the first step. What matters is what you do afterward. Renee, sitting across the room, felt a complex mixture of emotions hearing Lisa speak. There was still a lingering hurt from the original incident, but it was gradually being replaced by something like hope, not just for her relationship with Lisa, but for the community as a whole. 3 weeks after the HOA meeting, Renee stood at the entrance to the community center, greeting residents as they arrived for the first Community Recognition Day. The turnout exceeded expectations. Nearly half the neighborhood had come, bearing dishes for the potluck and name tags proudly displayed on their shirts. Inside, activity stations lined the walls. Officer Torres and Officer Chen staffed the police department booth, handing out safety information and chatting with residents. Thomas and the HOA board had set up a table with community maps and information about upcoming projects. In one corner, a photographer took professional photos for the directory, capturing families and individuals against a simple blue backdrop. And near the refreshment table, Lisa Winters was helping children make personalized name tags, including titles like Future Astronaut and World's U. best cookie baker, along with their names. The buzz of conversation filled the room, neighbors introducing themselves to people they'd lived near for years but never really known, staff members being recognized for their contributions to the community, newcomers being welcomed with genuine warmth. Renee moved through the crowd, making introductions and ensuring everything ran smoothly. She paused near the display of the first printed pages of the community directory, photos and names arranged by street address, with brief notes about hobbies, occupations, and interests. Her own family's photo was there, along with her title as property manager, and a mention of Jason's basketball achievements. Seeing it in print, part of the official record of the community, gave her a sense of belonging that felt both new and deeply satisfying. "This is amazing," a voice said beside her. It was Mrs. Henderson, studying the directory pages with approval. "You know, I've lived here 20 years, and I'm meeting people today I never knew were my neighbors." "That's exactly the point," Renee replied. As the afternoon progressed, Renee found herself standing near the community center doors, taking a moment to observe what she had helped create. The gathering had taken on a life of its own, with spontaneous conversations and connections forming throughout the room. Anthony appeared at her side, handing her a cup of punch. "You did this," he said simply. "We all did," she corrected him. "But it started with you, with how you chose to respond to what happened." Renee sipped her punch thoughtfully. Sometimes the hardest experiences lead to the most important changes. Across the room, she caught Lisa's eye. The woman who had once called the police on her gave a small, acknowledging nod, not asking for forgiveness, but expressing gratitude for the chance to be part of something better. Renee nodded back, a silent understanding passing between them. What had begun as a painful confrontation was transforming into something neither of them could have anticipated. The foundation of a truly inclusive community, built one recognition at a time. 3 months had passed since the first Community Recognition Day, and Oak Ridge was preparing for its summer pool party, the unofficial end to the swimming season. Paper lanterns hung from trees surrounding the pool area, and tables covered with blue cloths dotted the concrete deck. The smell of grilling hamburgers filled the air as the late afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the water. Renee moved efficiently through her pre-party checklist, confirming that the lifeguards were in position. The sound system was working and the pool chemistry was perfect. This event marked the culmination of a summer that had transformed Oak Ridge in subtle but meaningful ways. "Need any help?" asked a now familiar voice. Renee turned to see Lisa approaching with a large bowl of fruit salad. "That looks delicious," she said. "The food table is over by the shallow end." Lisa nodded and headed in that direction, stopping to chat with neighbors along the way. The ease with which she now moved through the community was a marked change from the woman who had once called the police on someone she didn't recognize. The past 3 months had seen the Community Recognition Initiative flourish. The photo directory was now a prized possession in many Oak Ridge homes. Quarterly events had become highlights of the community calendar. Most importantly, residents had begun to truly see each other, not just as neighbors, but as individuals with stories, contributions, and a shared investment in making Oak Ridge a place where everyone belonged. For Renee and Lisa, the journey had been particularly significant. What began as an awkward attempt at reconciliation had gradually evolved into something neither woman had expected. A genuine friendship built on honesty, mutual respect, and a commitment to growth. "The pool has never looked better," Thomas commented, joining Renee by the lifeguard stand. "This whole summer has been exceptional, thanks largely to you." "The community stepped up," Renee replied modestly. "I just provided the structure. You provided more than that," Thomas insisted. "You showed us what leadership looks like, not just managing facilities, but bringing people together. The board wants to discuss expanding your role when your contract comes up for renewal next month." Renee raised an eyebrow. "Expanding?" "Community Engagement Director," Thomas said. "In addition to your property management duties. With a salary increase, of course." "Think about it." Before she could respond, Jason appeared, dripping pool water onto the concrete. "Mom, when are we eating? I'm starving." Renee laughed. 15 minutes. Now stop making puddles and go dry off." As Thomas moved away to greet arriving residents, Renee allowed herself a moment to take in the scene. The pool area was filling with families. The tables were laden with potluck dishes, and the community she had helped reshape was celebrating together. On the far side of the pool, she spotted Anthony deep in conversation with Officer Torres and his wife. Her husband caught her eye and gave her a thumbs up, his pride evident even from a distance. The official start of the party was signaled by Thomas tapping a spoon against his glass to gather everyone's attention. The crowd quieted, turning toward the board president expectantly. "Welcome to our end-of-summer celebration," he began. "Before we dig into this amazing food, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the person who made this season special for all of us. Renee Taylor has been our property manager for 3 years, but this summer she became something more. The heart of our community." Applause rippled through the crowd, catching Renee by surprise. She felt a flush rise to her cheeks as Thomas continued. "Many of you know that earlier this year we launched the Community Recognition Initiative. What you might not know is that it grew out of a challenging incident, one that could have divided us, but instead brought us together, thanks to Renee's vision and leadership." Renee's eyes found Lisa in the crowd. The other woman gave her a small, encouraging nod. "So today," Thomas concluded, "the HOA board would like to present Renee with this plaque, naming her Oak Ridge's first community builder of the year. And I'm pleased to announce that we've unanimously voted to create a new position, Community Engagement Director, which we hope Renee will accept." More applause erupted as Thomas handed Renee the plaque. She stood, momentarily speechless, looking at the engraved words that summarized her contribution in simple but powerful terms. "For turning recognition into belonging. Thank you," she said finally, her voice steady despite the emotion welling in her chest. "But this recognition belongs to all of us. What happened this summer wasn't about one person's vision. It was about an entire community choosing to see each other more clearly and care for each other more deeply." She paused, gathering her thoughts. 3 months ago, we started a conversation about what it means to truly belong in Oak Ridge. That conversation continues, and it matters not just for us, but for the example we set for our children and for other communities. Glancing at Jason, who was watching her with uncharacteristic teenage attention, she added, "I'm honored to accept this recognition and the new role, and I'm excited to see where we go from here." As the applause faded and people began filling their plates, Renee found herself surrounded by well-wishers. Mrs. Henderson hugged her tightly. Doug Patterson's kids presented her with hand-drawn thank you cards. Officer Chen promised the police department would continue supporting community events. When the initial rush subsided, Lisa approached holding 2 plates of food. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, offering one to Renee. They found a quiet table at the edge of the pool area, away from the bustle of the main gathering. For a few minutes they ate in comfortable silence, watching the celebration unfold around them. "I never properly thanked you," Lisa said finally. "For what?" "For giving me a chance to be better." Lisa set down her fork. "You could have made me the villain in this story. You could have named me at that HOA meeting, made sure everyone knew what I did. Instead, you invited me to be part of the solution." Renee considered this. "I think we all deserve the opportunity to grow, and sometimes we need someone to hold the door open for us." "Well, I'm grateful you held that door," Lisa replied. "And I want you to know that I'm committed to holding it open for others. I've been talking with the Newcomers Committee about adding a specific focus on welcoming diverse residents." "That's a great idea," Renee said, genuinely impressed by how far Lisa had come in her awareness and engagement. Their conversation was interrupted by the sudden, energetic beats of dance music pumping through the speakers. Children rushed to the open area near the pool where Thomas's teenage daughter had set up his DJ. Even some of the older residents were tapping their feet to the rhythm. "I think that's our cue," Renee laughed, standing and extending her hand to Lisa. "Shall we?" Together they joined the impromptu dance party forming on the pool deck. Anthony twirled Renee while Jason pretended to be mortified by his parents' dance moves. Officer Torres and his wife showed off surprisingly good salsa steps. Mrs. Henderson taught a group of delighted children the moves to a dance from her youth. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows and painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Renee found herself at the edge of the pool, momentarily alone. She slipped off her sandals and sat, letting her feet dangle in the cool water. The surface reflected the paper lanterns, now glowing softly in the gathering dusk. Laughter and conversation floated around her, the soundtrack of a community at ease with itself and each other. If someone had told her on that Saturday 3 months ago, when a stranger called the police on her, that it would lead to this moment, she wouldn't have believed them. Yet here she was, surrounded by people who knew her name, her role, her contribution, people who recognized her in every sense of the word. Anthony appeared beside her, sitting down and dipping his own feet in the water. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Renee leaned against his shoulder. "I was just thinking about recognition, how it's about more than just knowing someone's name or face. It's about seeing their humanity, their belonging." He nodded, understanding as always. "And you made that happen here." "We all did," she corrected gently. "And we're still doing it day by day." Across the pool, Lisa was helping an elderly neighbor to a chair, their conversation animated and comfortable. New residents were being introduced to longtime community members. Children who had been strangers at the beginning of summer now played together like old friends. The incident that had sparked it all, a moment of prejudice and misunderstanding, had been transformed into something powerful and lasting, not erased or forgotten, but channeled into change that rippled outward, touching everyone in Oak Ridge. As darkness fell completely and the party lights twinkled against the night sky, Renee knew that the real story wasn't about a 911 call or a moment of recognition. It was about what happens afterward, the choices people make, the bridges they build, and the communities they create where everyone is seen, known, and truly belongs.